closed my script by accident. This video is made for adult collectors because logic, he got his arm eaten off. So Gamer Edition has had a bit of a rocky start, and so is this video. That took like 4 tries. But its Voyagers have been pretty good, honestly, barring a couple of issues. Shockwave is a design I absolutely adore from the games. Having recently finished both of them again with some friends because they'd never actually seen the campaign before, I wanted a Shockwave, so getting a toy of him is a must-have for me. And this one is pretty not bad, but I very much hope the new one they eventually make fixes the problems of this old mold, because while I like it, it has its fair share of problems. This is the 2012 Generations Fall of Cybertron Shockwave, and it looks very thin. Due to his transformation and how his alt mode looks, he doesn't have a lot of mass to him. That, and he's a deluxe, which he sorely needed to be a Voyager. And yes, the 2 hands is accurate to the game because he had 2 normal arms until the end of the game, where, spoiler alert, Grimlock eats his arm off, so he's forced to replace it. But for my sanity, let's just put the cannon on. There we go. Going on that arm because that's the side I normally have the gun in the game. I like the dark purple they used to make this guy, though in game it was a touch or 2 lighter, and as such the details kind of get lost a bit here because of how dark the plastic is. You just don't get that nice visual appeal of the sculpted lines as much as some others from this time. It kind of reminds me of looking at Fall of Cybertron Onslaught, except this time he doesn't look like a baked potato. And he is very much lacking in the paint department. The shoulders and thighs could use a bit more color, maybe a touch more in the lines to not only better define them, but also not look like a sea of purple plastic, because this whole thing just looks kind of plain. Though the light piping works wonders on this toy, dear lord. He is very skinny though, especially in the legs. Yeah, they tried to bulk him up by swinging down these panels, but it doesn't really work super well, and his legs look so thin. Not in the sense that they will snap, because I've never heard of that being an issue at all, and they feel great, but they just don't look great. And also due to the way his feet are made and where they are per the transformation, bits of the jet stick out at the bottom a tiny bit too much, and he wobbles when he stands ever so slightly. That's kind of annoying. The last couple of gamer toys have all had posing montages, and that's basically when I really like the posing on a toy, I do that. But due to this not having a waist joint or ankle tilts, I've had cities and dust stuck in my head the entire time shooting this video because I just finished the game like yesterday. Anyways, Shockwave's articulation is not very good. He's very much a product of his time. Then again, at the same time, this came out and was like a bajillion times better than this. This came out a few years before and was a bajillion times better than this. So it's unfortunate how Shockwave was made. This came out around the same time, and this has ankle tilts. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. I'm gonna leave the cannon on because there's nothing I want to talk about with the cannon. But anyways, the head can rotate. It can do a full 360, which is, you know, exorcism Shockwave if you want. Shoulders can rotate. They can go in and out. You have the second joint in the middle as well for the transformation. It doesn't lock, so it kind of gets annoying. However, you have a bicep, like an elbow band and bicep swivel because it's ball jointed. But this joint right here does allow for some like over the arm, like over the chest, stuff. So you can get some use out of it. It is kind of useful. And that shot where you see him standing here with his cannon up like that, that's because I have the arm like this, because it does help. It acts as like a double joint, but that way. So it can be useful. It just doesn't lock sometimes. No wrist articulation, no waist articulation. Hips are on ball joints. They can go all the way up. They can go back. They can go in and out. You have an above the knee swivel. You have less than 90 degrees of, well, I mean, it is 90 degrees, but the way it's shaped doesn't look 90 degrees. Bend at the knee, and then the toes can move. There's no ankle tilts. His wings can also, like, you can, if you want to do the Prime Dreadwing thing, you can do that. And then the cannon does do some stuff. You can pull this off. This is extremely loose on my copy. Like, I can just, it just comes right off. And you get these 3 little laser pistol things, which I don't remember this being in the game. I remember a triple barrel chain gun being in the previous game, and that's what I kind of think this is, but I don't remember this specific sort of setup being in the game. This was, though, in the multiplayer. You could use that. But in the ways that they can improve this for a modern day sort of gamer edition toy, is like waist joint, ankle pivots, wrist swivels, because they like Starscream seems to have all of that, and just like a ball jointed head, better balance, more beef. Like even Soundwave as a deluxe, because he needs to be a Voyager as well, but as a deluxe he nails a lot of it. It's still concept design. His shoulders aren't that big, the hips need to be different, the arms are a little too spindly, the feet are weird, but at least this sort of nails the aesthetic of the games. This really kind of doesn't. Also, there's no way for you to tell this without holding it, but my figure's hip assembly is really wobbly in there, and I can feel it. It's going do 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 as I shake it. This guy, he's just because I bought this yesterday used, he's loose. But yeah, it's unfortunate that he ended up the way he did, because everything around this guy, other than Bruticus, was pretty good for the video game stuff. Like again, you had this in the same toy line. Ankle tilts, wrist swivels, like amazing plastic feel. Like the plastic on this doesn't feel the greatest either. It feels really thin. This feels kind of thick and like nice to handle. This one weighs a little bit more than this toy as well. So like, it's just strange how Shockwave ended up. So that's Shockwave's robot, a flawed bot mode that looks alright, but desperately needs more color and some bulk. Something I know the new one, whenever that releases, will surely fix. Now, of course, as he doesn't become a gun, this doesn't follow any sort of traditional Shockwave transformations, and then it's not a tank, so it doesn't follow any of the other traditional Shockwave transformation standards. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna rip the gun off first, then you wanna fold the hands in, like so. Then, what you wanna do is you want to open these shoulders up like that, and bring the head up, fold this in. Now, one cool feature is when you bring this back down, it pops the head out. It is spring loaded. There's like a latch, a release latch in there. That's pretty cool. You rotate this up all the way, and then you take the gun and you peg it into the square peg located right on his anus. You then sandwich all of this into here. I'm very curious as to how the air raid version of this mold does this, because this was retooled into air raid, because it doesn't have the gun, it has a sword instead. Then you bring this whole section down like that. You want to then take the shoulders. You want to bring them around like this, fold them up, they will peg together. English is hard. You then peg the arms into place, and then you want to sort of accordion all of this up so that it sort of works itself in, but you have to make sure like the elbows are all lined up, and doing that can be a bit difficult. Also, trying to show this is a bit difficult because of how dark the plastic is. Let me brighten this up a little bit. But there, you can see like the elbows have to be at very specific angles, and both of mine are at different points of looseness, so they move independently from each other, and it is very strange. Then you want to take this front section here, rotate it, not unpeg it, rotate it around, and it will peg into the ball joint air escape hole thing there. So you do that on both sides to sort of fill out the alt mode. Then flip down the wings. They don't peg in, they just sort of rest on top of these panels you just folded out. And there's Shockwave. And I love the way they do the booster engine. That little bit of the arms becoming the booster is so cool. That is very cool. Oh, these don't lock in, so they do move occasionally. And if you have loose feet, well then that sucks. They're friction, so you can like thicken it, but that still sucks. But yeah, that's Shockwave in his alt mode. No landing gear, but he's never landed as this thing. It just flies. Now that's so nice looking and accurate, and it gets longer. It's actually a very nice transformation. I find myself switching it back and forth often at my desk because it's really, really fun. Also, on a side note, just speaking of jets, I learned today that Nitro Zeus was a Saab. We used to own a Saab car. That's just weird. I like this jet. The darker colors kind of suit this more, and the lines feel a bit more defined. That was until I cleaned it off after buying it and all the dust from the previous owner came out, and now the lines are kind of hidden again. It's not as plain as the robot mode though, that's for sure. The paint flow kind of works better here as all the silver is just on the side and sort of goes across in one line. And the way the gun integrates into the middle is pretty nifty with that big chunk of silver like engine block in the middle. It looks neat. It kind of looks like the Knights of Ren ship, except this one doesn't suck. It still feels a bit flat and thin in this mode, but in the game, the jet kind of looks like that, so that makes more sense. It's going to be a very interesting toy for them to make in the Gamer Edition. But even after all that, for the $10 this thing cost me, I like it. It's not perfect, and I wouldn't pay more than 10 used for one, because you can find it for cheap. But if you can find it for cheap, I highly recommend going for it. It's pretty nifty. Though, again, they will make a new one eventually in like the next year or two, and this will be outdated, but as a small, neat little Shockwave Deluxe is pretty good considering Shockwave rarely gets Deluxes, I've noticed. But that's my look at the original gamer Shockwave. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.